Oh, we're talking PlayStation news today. Give me a second. Whoa. Yep, there it is right there. A little more. Yep, that's the money right there. A PlayStation 5 Pro and Slim will be available at the end of 2023 into 2024 for a price of $600 to $700 US. Where am I getting this information? Did I pull it from my rump or my tuchus? Not quite. We're going to look at the past or history of Sony consoles, and then we're also going to look at the future, some patents and some news that we have, some leaks, if you will, about the future of the PlayStation 5. Let's get this thing. So a YouTube tech channel called Moore's Law is Dead made a video.
No, I am now 100% sure of the PlayStation 5 Pro coming out, I would say by the end of 2023, but I would say for sure by the end of 2024.
Showcasing that a PlayStation 5 Pro as well as a Slim is most likely coming out between 2023 and 24 at a price of $600 to $700 US. Then a bunch of journalistic platforms such as Games Radar, Comic Book, Tom's Guide, Kotaku, etc. made articles. But is that what I'm basing my opinion on in this video? Absolutely not. I like to go a little bit deeper than that. Instead of just massaging the surface, I like to barrel my way in with facts. So these three articles, as well as the original YouTube video that kind of sparked up this whole rumor, are going to be cited or sourced down there in the description below, as I do anytime I cover any news in the gaming community or industry. Without further ado, let's just jump right into this topic. First of all, let's look back historically, because a lot of times by looking at the past, we can see where the future is going, as history generally repeats itself and things are cyclical, and they go in a cycle. Dating back to the PlayStation 1, which was just called the PlayStation, there was actually a midlife refresh that happened about 3.5 to 4 years after, which was just called the PS1. 3 years after the launch of the PS2, there was the PS2 Slim. PlayStation 3 saw 2 midlife refreshes. 3 years after the launch of the PlayStation 4 came the Slim and Pro. So it makes absolute sense that Sony would continue that production model, considering unlike a gaming PC, a console is built to spec one time and cannot be upgraded. The components in there are not modular. You can't swap them out because, well, it's an APU, which is a CPU, GPU, RAM, storage, basically all in one component called an SoC, or system on a chip, or APU. So what this means is that console manufacturers, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, Sega, Atari, I know the last two are non-relevant anymore, but they would introduce midlife refreshes, i.e. not an entirely new generation, however, substantial hardware revisions, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that technology is constantly evolving or getting better. So in a 2 to 3 year period, the same silicon chips can be much smaller, printed circuit boards, PCBs can be tinier, and yet have the same performance. So again, they can make slim, smaller versions. But what helps to solidify the fact that a PlayStation 5 Pro and Slim are in development is patents. Sony files patents like nobody's business. Prior to the release of the PlayStation 5, several patents were filed. One of them showing a PS5 that runs dual GPUs, which by the way, the standard PlayStation 5, digital only or disc version, does not have dual GPUs. Interesting. It also showed a bigger fan for potentially better cooling, and there was another patent for a much smaller design, most likely the Slim. And the reason Sony and Microsoft file these patents before the actual release of the Series X and the PlayStation 5 is because they want a non-stop, all aboard the USS hype train, where people are continually getting fed new software and hardware throughout the life cycle of the console. Not to mention they want to start the actual production or manufacturing of these midlife refreshes well in advance, because as you can see, assembly times are savagely hampered due to the pandemic and the silicon shortage, which is affecting auto manufacturers, getting infotainment centers in the dashes of their new cars. Several cell phone companies actually had to can their new models for the year. But if these console companies get a jump on the production, they can have these consoles potentially, hopefully, maybe, possibly ready for the consumer. Now here's something that I personally want to address: 8K gaming. It is in all the articles that are cited or sourced below, and it is also talked about in the video. This is my opinion, my well-educated, well-versed opinion on the topic. I do not believe 8K gaming is going to be feasible or attainable for the average consumer, the average gamer, for this particular console generation, i.e. the next 5 to 6 years. They're saying that the PS5 Pro will be an 8K powerhouse. The thing is, the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X are rated for 8K. It says right on the box, and yes, that HDMI 2.1 output on the back of these consoles can output a clean 8K signal. So technically your existing PS5 can output 8K footage. However, that is most likely going to be 8K video footage. It is not going to be 8K gaming, which is incredibly resource intensive. Even high-end flagship graphics cards like 3090s and 3080 Ti's will start sweating, perspiring greatly when they start trying to push a native 8K image, or even upscaled 8K. Now, the only caveat to this is that rendering technology such as DLSS or deep learning supersampling on NVIDIA cards or FidelityFX, which is more or less the same thing on AMD's side, basically allows a console or a PC to think that it's running a game at 1080p or 1440, but dynamically upscale it to 4K or even 8K, so the end user on their monitor or display sees an 8K or 4K image, but the resources of the console or PC are only being taxed or stressed out at the level of 1080p or 1440 or 1600p or whatever. Which, by the way, FidelityFX is making its way to the current PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series because it shares the AMD RDNA 2 architecture. And it was already announced a few months back. I did cover the article with sources cited in that video that AMD FidelityFX was making its way to all future AMD GPUs and also APUs, for example, what's currently in our consoles. But even if DLSS, or in this case with the consoles, FidelityFX on the AMD APU side of the house actually makes it possible for these consoles to push 8K games, which, by the way, the frame rate would only be at about a capped 30. So most people, if they're playing a competitive first-person shooter or a racing game or a fighting game with a lot of fast motion, they're going to want to prioritize a high frame rate over that sheer graphical fidelity. So they would probably taper back to 4K or even 1440 with a higher frame rate. But here's the real issue in my eyeballs and my corneas. 8K displays, i.e. PC monitors and TVs, are dumbass expensive. Here's a Dell 32-inch 8K monitor, $3,700. Here's a Sony 85-inch 8K TV, $9,000. Was 10 grand. Now, I do understand the fact that 1080p and even now 4K TVs have dropped substantially in price, to where now 4K TVs, they used to be only the rich kids on the block had those, and now pretty much it's the norm, it's the standard. It's still going to take several years for 8K to become that new norm. Not to mention the very few titles that actually support 8K gaming on these new gen consoles, like I said, are going to have a relatively low frame rate to where we're actually backtracking with what makes a next generation console next gen, which would be faster load times due to these having SSDs instead of traditional mechanical hard drives, and a higher refresh rate, i.e. even the $300 Series S has a big old catalog of games that hits 120 frames per second. Granted, that is upscaled 1440, but still, that's a next-gen console. So if all of these stars align, i.e. you get yourself a expensive 8K monitor, and your new console can target 8K, and you don't mind getting a very low frame rate, basically what you would see on the base PS4 or Xbox One in 2023, when we're getting accustomed to a locked 60 or 120 on these consoles. Then on top of that, we get the actual game developers having to produce these games at a native 8K, which is going to be more resource intensive for them during the game development phase as well, which means game development might actually be longer. So even longer waiting periods in between getting AAA games released. And they're charging $70 for MSRP on new release PS5 titles. That might go up as well to 75 or even $80 if they're pushing these games at 8K. That I don't know yet. I'm just kind of speculating on that, but I could easily see it happening. But finishing this video out, concluding, putting the dick in verdict, if you will, my final thoughts are, yes, I do believe in 2023 or 2024, we will see two new versions of a PlayStation 5. A Slim and a Pro. I like to throw out numbers as well, guys, so let me go ahead and do it. I believe the Slim is going to be between $550 and $600, and I do believe the Pro is going to be $700. Now, besides the extra graphical horsepower that this PS5 Pro would have, I also do hope that they upgrade or boost up the performance of the Wi-Fi chip on board, because it's less than impressive. If you enjoyed this video, it stimulated you in the gamer nether regions, maybe grabbed you by the gamer rod and produced gamer goo, liking the video will help it to get seen by more people, so this information will reach and assist them as well. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, as well as tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, and I will see you tomorrow, because I upload daily. I also go live on this channel at random times. I do put a blast out on my Twitter and community Discord. Both of those are linked in the description below, and that is right here on this channel, as well as Twitch and Facebook Gaming. I do the whole multi-streaming thing for discoverability. Peace.